Hi, I'm Darryl Foy. I'm just presenting a bit of an overview of my research studies from the past 3 or 4 years, which were hell-bent on trying to understand a little bit more about the behaviour of people who use exercise wearables and what effect the anthropometric and demographic features design of the system may have on the exercise behaviour over time, and what we can learn from that to try and deliver on some kind of practical application for these devices that stands scrutiny. I was motivated to do this work because I'd spent a few years designing and developing technology in this space, which predated Fitbit, so I had something of a vested interest, if you will. And I was also astonished by some of the hyperbole that comes from the mass marketing of the premium manufacturers of these devices. As you can tell from the graph here, the growth of the sale of these devices is exponential, but the gap between what these things promise and what they actually deliver is still quite substantial, and this work was a small step along the way to try and bridge that gap in a meaningful way. I've included a quote here from some guys from the University of Pennsylvania. Found that the gap between recording information using these devices and changing behaviour is substantial. So while they might be increasing in popularity, there's little evidence that these wearables are bridging that gap between recording information and changing behaviour. Look at the subsequent chart. This says it all, really. This is actual market data from Fitbit, and it's 50% abandonment rate. As you can tell, the number of returning customers as a portion of total devices sold is quite small. New customers form the overwhelming portion of each incremental sale. So, I'm not surprised. The financial imperatives for a publicly traded stock such as Fitbit are very different to the motivations, measures and constraints faced by health practitioners in their, I think, somewhat vainglorious attempt to use these devices in a meaningful way. There's a large gap between commerce, research and practice here that it needs to be closed up because they do have potential. As Mercer discovered a couple of months ago in a study that was published, only a little over 50% of most common exercise wearables implement behaviour change techniques. It's a little wonder that they're not being successful. So my work actually spanned 4 discrete studies, and what I'll touch on today is basically the first of these studies. It used data from 23,000 individual users of an exercise wearable captured over a 3-year period. And what I found extremely interesting, and I'll share that with you today. But the motivation I had, as I said, from my experience in the industry and my pride at some of the claims of vendors, meant I had a few questions I wanted answered. Some of these include, how do user characteristics influence the use of the wearable and whether or not people persist with using it for exercise, and how individual social factors also affect those particular outcomes. And really importantly for me was I wanted to understand, given this gap between health behaviour techniques and the apps and devices themselves, was there any way that I could meaningfully link existing evidence-based measurement devices with contemporary behavioural design models and come up with a way of merging these two in such a way that practitioners would be able to apply it in multidisciplinary teams when they're designing solutions based on the technology. So as you appreciate, This meant understanding and applying a number of somewhat disparate areas of knowledge, including health behaviour change theories. In this particular study, the theory we used was self-determination theory by Ryan and Decky. Persuasive systems design and BCSS, which is behaviour change system support models from the Finnish school led by Harry Oinas-Kukkonen. The behavioural dynamics and mathematics of social networking, most contemporary interesting work which is led by people like Damien Sempol from MIT. And of course, just conventional exercise science and exercise behaviour. So as I said, the work was based on data which was imported from a live database, and about 23,000 users who had agreed to share their data with health researchers. These people provided the data which spanned a 3-year period. And the descriptive analysis really focusing on who they were, metrics and demographics, how they use the system, how often they use the system, which functions they use in the system. So it's really sorting through the numbers and trying to understand a little bit more about what's going on, and from that identify factors that I could run the qualitative analysis through. And the qualitative stage is based around a surveyed subset of over 500 of these original users. So just recapping from an investigative flow perspective, I grabbed the data from the database, I wrote an SQL script to cleanse and model that in such a way that could be readily used in Stata. I had my set of questions, of which we looked at a few of them. There were a number of other questions. I tried to identify factors of interest, just try and confirm those factors, run some different types of regressions on the data, do some factorial analysis, and set up a qualitative process, which fundamentally started with a look at this subset of people and how they did, if there were any differences from the rest of that population that we originally looked at, we asked them some interesting questions in the survey about the use of systems, exercise behaviour prior to using the system and things like that, which we'll touch on. I used a couple of different scales. I used an existing scale from Oinas-Kukkonen's Finnish school, BCSS and TSD, which had been used previously to define how design of a web-based weight loss management system affected the use of that system over time and the efficacy of the system in terms of its targeted behaviour. So I validated that scale against my own population, which was interesting. I don't really go into detail in this particular presentation on that, but part of the series of journal articles. What I did was, as I asked some questions, is there any way I can start to bridge this gap between health behaviour change theories and persuasive systems design modelling? And we did. And so I started that process by combining the persuasive design scale with a scale used to measure the relatedness needs of others to one another in exercise, which is called ROPA, which is part of self-determination theory's basic psychological needs mini-theory, which says that an individual to commence and sustain a positive behaviour such as exercise, 3 psychological needs need to be satisfied. For that individual, they need to feel autonomous, they need to feel competent in that particular task or behaviour, and they need to feel like they relate to others in this behaviour and that they have the support of others for this behaviour. So I combined 2 completely disparate areas into one hybrid scale and validated that and did so successfully. And subsequent to that, I just constructed equation modelling. Again, that's a bit too mind-numbing to talk about over a lunch break, but that'll be in a Zoom article moving forward. Now, as part of this presentation, I've provided some pretty comprehensive and colourful infographic sheets, infographic 1, infographic 2, and I'm going to talk to some of that information now and give you some context for those figures and talk a little bit about what we learned. Because really what I wanted to do in this particular presentation was touch on a couple of really important things about what we can learn about which individuals were persistent with using this technology for exercise, and this very, very interesting little aberration or anomaly, phenomenon that occurs with those users of the system who tweet their exercise to Twitter. You know what I mean? Okay, so let's start with the initial analysis of the population. What we found was obviously predominantly male, the mean age of 39, and they had running as their preferred activity. Anthropometrically, the user population seemed to fit a reasonably lean profile with a BMI score a little under 25. This is unsurprising given the finding from a subsequent survey that showed 85.4% of the population subset were exercising regularly in the 12 months prior to purchasing the wearable. Now, the users in this study worked out on average 1 to 3 hours per week based on an average fitness index generated by the system of 5.7. So you could probably say that people were predominantly lean and active. It was discovered that those with leaner BMI scores logged into the app more often. Probably maybe because the leaner, fitter users were training more regularly. And we know that individuals that exercise more frequently tend to have lower BMI scores. Now, the social uses of the system encompass a number of functions, first of which is the following activity, whereby one user can follow one or more others, an activity that may or may not be reciprocated. Now, the mean number of people users followed is 3.11. Number of people users followed by has a mean of 1.71. A regression analysis for login count on following behaviours indicates that the login count per user increases by an average of 11.4 for each additional follower. So the following dynamic is quite a positive one. We looked at a regression model for the mean number of uploaded exercise sessions as a linear function of the number of people a user follows. The average number of exercise sessions for a user increases by 0.22 for each additional person a user follows. So the implication from this analysis of following behaviour on this app is that both the average number of logins and the average number of moves increase with the number of people a user follows or is followed by. As to why this may be the case, it's difficult to be absolutely certain. On the face of it, there exists a synergy between system use and passive social relationships expressed as following behaviour, such that the more interest that is shown by an individual towards another, the more likely it is they'll log in to the app and upload exercise data. Now, another interesting social function in this app is the like function, thumbs up, whatever. So it's just a way of indicating someone's approval for another's uploaded exercise session. What's really interesting about what we found was that 67.4% of all these likes that were sent by an individual to an exercise session were sent to their own uploaded sessions. Now, more than 75% of users received 2 thumbs, 2 likes or fewer, and only received those likes from themselves. The data for for thumbs or likes sent, which reflected the same phenomenon. It's more than 35% of users sent 2 or less likes and only sent them to themselves. The self-appreciation may be interpreted as a form of self-affirmation or exercise by the individual. It seems to be signalling to themselves that they are pleased to have exercised and or are pleased with the nature of what they've just done in an exercise session. Now, self-affirmation theory maintains that an individual may react to a threat to their self-esteem by using other self-resources to sustain an image of themselves as capable, which primarily involves drawing upon an alternate individual attribute that has proven their self-worth in a separate circumstance. That's evidence from Cohen and Sherman in 2014. So it may be that there's a tendency for the users of this exercise wearable and its app to send themselves a like, a thumbs up after exercising as a way of drawing some, protecting their self-esteem, drawing upon their exercise competence, which is a necessary element in experiencing self-efficacy, which again is seen as vital to an individual's motivation to commence and continue exercise. And there's a raft of studies in that regard: Bandura, Liz Clemenger and Judge, Martin and Woods, etc. The actual role that self-affirmation plays in engaging people in physical activity and sustaining them hasn't really been investigated to a great deal of depth or breadth. There was a recent study by Cook, Trpacic, Harris and White in 2014, and they found that self-affirmation with their participants before the provision of the actual information about physical activity and its effects on health increased self-reported physical activity, and these self-affirmed participants reported involving themselves in more physical activity at the follow-up periods compared with their non-affirmed counterparts. Self-affirmed participants also demonstrated stronger intentions and more positive attitudes compared with participants who did not affirm. This is a very limited study, so we don't want to draw too many conclusions from it. But aligning it with what we found with our own exercise wearables people, it's quite interesting because it also resonates somewhat with some work done by Tamer and Hancock in 2013 with Facebook users. It found that Facebook profiles are self-affirming through satisfying a user's need for self-worth and self-integrity. They also found a tendency for Facebook users to gravitate towards their online profiles after receiving a blow to the ego in an effort to remediate their self-esteem. So it may be, and this is drawing something of a short bow, that our exercise wearable app users found some succor in their exercise efforts as a means of feeling good about themselves. It's something that would probably warrant a little bit more investigation, more focused investigation, certainly. Now, along with being able to indicate likes, the system allows people to comment to another user, just generally make a comment to one another, or comment on an individual's uploaded exercise session. And as you can imagine, this requires a bit more of an active engagement from the user rather than just clicking on a thumb, say you like something. You actually have to type some meaningful text and upload it. So it's requires a bit more effort on the part of the user. The analysis really found that a relatively small number of users made an average of 4.5 comments each to a larger group of receivers who received on average 1.9 comments each. Each of these distributions is extremely positively skewed, and that's not unexpected in a real world population. You cannot, in my view, get to grips with this technology in a behavioural sense, in an exercise science sense, running small controlled trials with homogenous college students and the like, and drawing any meaningful conclusions. It's total bullshit, complete bullshit. You're dealing here with 23,000 people using the devices for real. Of course some of these analyses are going to find some interesting skewed distribution. It's real people. what was interesting here in this relatively modest use of this function by a small number of people in the population is pretty consistent with the subsequent survey of 500 odd people from a subset of the population, which found that even though 75% of the respondents to the survey regularly use the app and uploaded exercise sessions, in terms of the remaining use of the system, particularly the social functions like following another user, making comments, indicating a like or joining a group, no more than 25% of them reported either regularly or frequently using these functions. And of these functions, the most popular when ranked by mean turned out to be following another user or joining a group. Getting back to the initial population, both the number of general comments made and the number of general comments received are moderately positively correlated with login count, and only moderately. This result is to be expected as the user needs to make the effort to log in order to make a comment. So from a design perspective, perhaps one of the things to consider, and this is a reflection, an observation, not a fact, is that the ability to comment needs to be made a lot more explicit, a lot more pervasive, and ubiquitous across the system, and a lot simpler. For example, there can be truncated comments that are fairly generic, which you can make, which are pre-existing text assigned to an icon. For example, well done, mate, might be an icon for comment. Click on that and it populates the comment field for the receiving user. That's why people pay me money. Regression analysis also determined that neither gender nor any of the anthropometric measures such as BMI and fitness index were associated with the number of general comments made by users. If we look at the comments that were made towards others' exercise sessions, then we find that users received on average, the users received comments with an average of 3.5 comments received by users. This doesn't make any sense. What I'm trying to say, of the users that received comments for their exercise session, these individuals received comments during 2.6 exercise sessions on average. So it's not extensively used by people. It may be a reflection of the social ties between individuals, but something I didn't look at, or wish I had have looked at, as perhaps a mediating factor in this score. But that's something well worth investigating further down the track. Interestingly, better scores by users on the fitness measures, minimum of fitness index and median of BMI, are associated with an increased number of exercise sessions receiving comments for that user, as is the number of exercise sessions themselves. So that on the face of it, the fitter, leaner users exercise more using the system and receive more comments for the exercise from other users. To somewhat underline this phenomenon, in terms of the median of BMI, each increase of 4.5 to a BMI score leads to an average of 1 fewer exercise sessions receiving comments. So it's just a little bit of playing around with the numbers, just trying to look at that association between relative fitness and the level of social interactivity around that individual's exercise. In terms of gender differences, there's a little more pronounced in that males had an average of 2.9 exercise sessions that received comments, The females had an average of 4.9 exercise sessions they uploaded that received comments. Well, on the face of this data, it seems that female users garnered more comments about their uploaded exercise than the male counterparts. Now, Kimbrough, Bordano, Muscanel and Dill in 2013, and Katucci, Peslak, Kruk and Patricia in 2013 found that in analysis of online behaviour that women compared to men are generally more frequent mediated communication users, things like text messages and online commenting. So what we found in our particular population is pretty consistent with that evidence. And what's new in terms of what we found, is that it's related to an exercise behaviour. So that's interesting in itself. Right, so let's move on to one of the more interesting strands of behavioural data that I really want to drill down upon, basically went to town with, because I was trying to work out, as we all do when we look at those abandonment rates from those Fitbit charts, that who keeps using these things? What is it about them, about the system, about them that keeps them using it? So, and what we found, you look on the infographic sheet there, you see there's a propensity for a portion of users to publish their uploaded exercise sessions as tweets on Twitter. Well, it was associated with substantially higher levels of login and uploaded exercise sessions to the app. An estimated coefficient on published to tweets suggests that users of Twitter have 5.1 more uploaded exercise sessions than users who do not publish their sessions to Twitter. And a similar regression analysis revealed that the online social behaviour published to Twitter is positively correlated with login count. Users who publish to Twitter have an average of 13.2 more logins to the app than people who do not. This is a totally unexpected finding, and it might be, I'm not saying it is, might be of significance for designers of apps such as myself and allied health practitioners looking to use technology, particularly as subsequent investigation can determine how and why the ability to publish the data to Twitter boosts exercise regularity. It was also interesting, and I used to finish off this talk today, is that this extraordinary group of users who published exercise sessions to Twitter also demonstrated significantly higher ROPAS scores. Remember, relatedness to others in physical activity scores, which is part of the psychological needs mini theory, the self-determination theory of health behaviour change. These guys had significantly higher ROPAS scores than those who don't publish their exercise sessions to social media. Very, very interesting. Right, so let's get into the guts of it a little bit more. If you refer to the second infographic sheet, we'll get a little bit, it really focuses on classification and regression tree analysis, which kicks off this whole second phase of investigation once we discover this Twitter phenomenon. And so it looks at the bundles of attributes that we use to try and determine the system, if you like. So if we look at this slide here, the majority of people are in the top 50% of the average fitness index, so the fitter half of the population. They persisted with exercising over this study period, irrespective of how socially active they were online with the app, or how social they were online with external social media accounts. Didn't matter. The top half of fit people obviously were difficult to call, but part of some subsequent work is, probably more autonomously motivated and were able to persist. Well, very interesting. again consistent with what we're trying to uncover here, is that the users in the lowest 50% of fitness scores that don't work out, have the most intense workouts, have no followers, but who do have a Twitter account, they were as persistent with the system as the top half. So this is worthy of more investigation and more reflection. Okay, so I want to share with you a bit of a reflection and a slightly longer bow on drawing and coming up with something of an inference on what we've just discovered and we've just discussed in the last wee while. We know that people with higher ROPAS scores tweet more in this particular exercise app. So, and we've discovered that the less fit people will persist if they tweet. So it's not really drawing that long a bow and making that bold an inference by saying that the higher the ROPAS scores in this population, more likely people are tweeting, less fit people tend to tweet, and they persisted longer if they were tweeting. As I say, it's an inference and a reflection. Now the last part of this particular presentation touches on a very small section of the subsequent qualitative analysis work done with this data, and particularly looks at the implications of ROPAS scores as part of the hybrid scale I designed and had validated as part of the research. At this point in proceedings, that our factor analysis with inclusion of ROPAS in the scale showed a fresh divergence from the literature and the emergence of an interesting association. As you can see by the regression coefficient for the regression of the scales of two factors from the selective design scale, being social support and social identification. Their regression coefficients on ROPAS respectively reveal statistically significant positive relationship. Although high scores on ROPAS predict high scores on perceived social support as provided by the app, ROPAS itself was never specifically related to any exercise data system or online social network, so much as it is a reflection more so of face-to-face contact during exercise, or the requirement for face-to-face contact during exercise in order to feel that psychological need for relating to others being satisfied. As a result of these findings, there was reason that social identification with the system or social identification by the user with an online community that uses the app might be a prerequisite for ROPAS to have any effect on the social support given by that app. So as a result, it was reason that social identification with the online social network provided by the app could be a prerequisite for ROPAS to have any effect on whether or not the system is regarded as providing sufficient social support for them. So some mediation analysis was done and found that the significant effect of ROPAS disappears after, well, initially the first part of the mediation phase, we found ROPAS had a significant effect on social identification scores, and further mediation revealed that this effect was removed after social IDs added to the model. So we can observe that social identification fully mediates the relationship between ROPAS and social support scores. It appears that an individual who perceives high levels of relatedness to others during physical activity in the real world and identifies strongly with the online community of fellow app users will likely feel they receive high levels of social support from the system itself. This ROPAS-associated behaviour dynamic and other observations from the online activities of participants is shown in the diagram here, and it's something that I guess is the takeaway from today more than anything else is, you have to really understand and measure behavioural attributes if you're going to design systems intended to encourage, persuade, formulate an exercise behaviour that's sustainable using an exercise wearable. So summarising, what we have is a proclivity for greater system usage from those users that chose to publish their uploaded exercise sessions to Twitter. A positive association for the less fit users in this population between their Twitter usage and their persistence for exercise using the system. And I was also able to demonstrate the use of an integrated psychosocial measurement scale that combines existing constructs used by BCSS theory to analyse persuasive elements of behaviour change systems with standardised scales for assessing individuals' perceived relatedness to others in physical activity, thoughts on SDT. I know it's a gobful, but I think it's a step in the right direction. For me, in designing persuasive systems, there's a lot of bollocks, there's a lot of tabloid level evidence snippets used, and nothing that's end-to-end in terms of designing, implementing, testing, supporting an application for health behaviour change. And I'm hoping that by disclosing this work and sharing it with you today that, you might also be interested in being able to add some evidence to our knowledge base and try and close that gap between what these things promise and what can potentially deliver. So look, thanks so much for listening, and I've been extended. Really appreciate it. The reference listed here. For this particular presentation, this is available on SlideShare. That link will be provided to the university, and I can be contacted in Australia on 02 4017 0218, in New Zealand 021 332 778. Email on dlfoy@mortonlawson.com. That's mortonlawson.com. And my website is at mortonlawson.space. Right, no .com, mortonlawson.space. Thanks again.